We got the minutes of the July 10 meeting we need to approve. Everybody have a chance to look at them? See any corrections? Additions?
No, I like that. I moved to approve.
You were there.
I was there.
You were too? Yes. Okay. Graham, thank you. For a second? Was that you? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I don't have any correspondence. Holly, do you have any correspondence?
No correspondence, Michael.
Okay. I don't see anything that seems to pertain to the current budget review, so I guess we'll forget about that. It's a little early to be worried about the budget anyway. What's going on in the selectman's office, Sue?
Nothing.
That's it?
Well, I mean, basically, when I talked to you, we were gonna just have a meeting on the EMS.
Yeah, but then we decided.
Then I didn't realize that until at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So, I applied for 2 grants.
Good.
One for sidewalks, steep, and then they have a Main Street Investment Fund for City Meadow.
Good. How much?
$500,000 is the Main Street, no, that's the most. $500,000 for the Main Street investment. And that has to do, and that has, it can only be downtown, has to coincide with your plan of conservation and development.
How convenient do we have that?
Yes, and it's all in, City Meadow all falls within that aspect.
Is that one of those matching kinds of things?
No, $500,000. I'm applying for the full amount. It's gonna cost more than that in order to put it together, but we're still out there looking for other monies to, and it's only hard cost, no soft cost at all for a lot of it.
Are there any things that you know about for the handicap access aspect of that plan?
Not that I'm aware of.
Great. Take it from that to the treasurer down to treasurer. Any pension update?
No,
Nothing? Okay.
I keep hounding them.
What does it take?
I don't know, the registry letter, that's what I'm sending out.
I mean, these people work for us, right?
Yeah, but as Karen had indicated, we don't,
We're not high on the list.
yeah, because we don't pay them a lot of money.
You're being Jamie tonight, right?
Wait a minute, who's being Jamie? Nina?
Took no time at all. So, who's going to present the EMS building committee report? That you?
Our architect is going to bring you up to speed on where we've come from, where we are now. And, then I guess it's up to you after that.
Well,
You met Mike before, he's presented to you.
is this the same show we saw in Hall of Flags
No,
last winter?
no, it's a much reduced show, more of,
Is this show?
No, it's been updated.
Okay, good.
no, it won't be this year. Mike?
Okay, thanks, Mark. I don't know how much time you want to allocate to this. There's a lot of information here. I know Mark and Graham and others have been keeping me up to speed on the process, at least to some degree. So I won't go through all the slides in any detail, but if you see anything you want to talk about, just stop me and we can talk about it. So basically tonight what I want to do is show you, as Mark said, where we've been, where we need to go to meet different levels of budget that may or may not be allocated. So we'll show you the schemes and the relative cost of those schemes for a few different options. A lot of this hinges on the needs of the fire department to support the efforts that they make in town for all of these various activities, and provide a building that can accommodate all of the scheduled activities and unscheduled activities within the building. So this chart
Well, hang on a second, because I have a question.
Yes.
Who has gone where to find out what is recommended for a town of 47 square miles and 1,700 permanent residents, and the tallest building being the Infinity Hall, for what a town like this ought to have sitting in a fire garage?
Well, let's jump right to the chase. So 47 square miles, you've got square mile of water, 87% of that land is undeveloped, and you have two major highways. So what happens is when you look at the criteria for building a fire station to accommodate.
That's not my question.
Well,
I don't want to back in. I don't want you to back into it. But I'm saying this is what it is. I want to know if anybody has given any guidance on the subject. I mean, do we need a hook and ladder truck? What do we need?
Well, as far as the apparatus goes, I think everybody's in general agreement that you have the apparatus that you need,
No,
with the exception
there's
of.
no general agreement. It's the way it's always been. I really would like to know if there's an answer to my question. Have I gone to KERMA? Have I gone to the insurance companies that rate us?
Well, you have an ISO rating, which is very high compared to other communities of your size because of the apparatus you have. NFPA has certain requirements about what you need to support the activities in a town like this. But if one of the issues you have in this town is a variety. So whether you have 2,000 people or 20,000 people, you have to fight fires in the downtown area. You have to make rescues in the mountains, rescues in water, car accidents, fires. So the equipment you need to support the activities has less to do with the population as it does with the variety of activities you might anticipate. So if you go back to the number of calls, on average there's 174 emergency calls a year. And the high in 2011 was 232. And the variety of those calls are fires and accidents and rescues and storms, and the number of people in town doesn't necessarily drive the equipment you have. What you don't have is any water rescue equipment. We use mutual aid for that right now. So in the grand plan, there was some space allocated for a boat in the future. Whether or not that ever happens is a separate discussion. But if the idea is that you're going to build a fire station that can meet the NFPA requirements for training, meet the OSHA requirements for maneuvering and working safely in a building, meet the building and fire codes, one of the ironies in this fire station is there are lots of fire code violations within the fire station. Cleaning all of that up and getting a station that meets all of these requirements requires some footprint. And that's when we went through, I'll come back to the slide if anybody cares to, but when we went through their existing plan, looked at what they had and compared that to what is generally accepted as a safe firehouse, this firehouse came up short in a number of regards. Training space, maneuvering space, there's zero expansion space for equipment, which tends to get larger, not smaller. And one of the realities is that a lot of the firefighting and rescue equipment is stored on vehicles. The vehicle that they choose to store it on may or may not be the vehicle that ultimately needs to go to whatever event is called in. So there's some scramble space, some scramble activities that need to happen, but there's no space for it to happen. And if you look at the space within the building, if you look at the photo on the right, you can see the limited space between the wall and the apparatus, and then the space between the apparatus. If you imagine trying to load these trucks, get the people on these trucks and get out to an activity, you can see it's not a safe environment to do that. There's minimal space for a radio room. Right now you use a central dispatch, but if that dispatch goes down, you're on your own. And right now the radio is out in the apparatus bay, which is the loudest and most disruptive activity to run your radio. There's very little maintenance space.
And the radio is for communication from within the department, right?
Well, within the department, but if the central 911 system goes down, you dispatch out of your firehouse locally. So there's a lot of activities happening in that bay, and then there's essentially one room in the brick wing that takes care of everything else, training, ready room, meeting space, office space, storage, everything happens in that one room. And then overflow storage happens in the exit corridors, and you've got turnout gear about, not where you want it for the apparatus. In emergency conditions, the apparatus bays become the space where you set up the cots. So you've got diesel fuel, propane, CO2, gasoline, all stored right where the cots need to be. Obviously not an ideal situation. And then the bays again become training and meeting space because it's the only space in the building large enough to do it. And those bays are not really meant to be occupied that way. There's no vehicle exhaust system in the building. The temperature and humidity control is almost non-existent in the bays. There's no separation between the bays and the occupied spaces, and there's no separation between the occupied spaces and the outdoors when the doors are open. To that, you add a lack of a fire separation between the two wings, and the fact that over the existing apparatus bays is a wood frame structure with no fire separation and storage above the vehicles. So, it's not a safe condition, it's not an efficient condition. It's something they've been living with for years, but obviously is not what you want in an ideal facility. The kitchen's non-compliant, there's lack of storage, there's no handicapped accessibility. And then architecturally, the way the building sits on the site is another issue, and its scale and mass in a residential neighborhood can be improved. But to get more direct to your question, I sort of took the long way around it. These are the things that govern what a fire station needs to be, a volunteer fire station. So you got the Connecticut State Building and Fire Codes, the American with Disabilities Act. There's 3 specific NFPA documents that define how to operate a fire station. One of them is specific to volunteer fire departments. And then OSHA and the federal regulations regarding fire stations. So these are sort of the governing documents. And what you'll see, let me just jump forward here to some benchmarking. We looked at other facilities constructed in towns that have similar land area and populations. We looked at some towns that build new stations and some that have old stations. What you'll see is Norfolk at 47 square miles is one of the larger land area towns, comparable to Kent and Haddam. Kent just built a new fire station at 15,000 feet. Haddam, granted, has a much larger population, but they built a new station at 15,500, but they also have 3 satellite stations to cover that land area. So they have trucks dispersed throughout the town. One of them is on the other side of the Connecticut River, naturally. So within Haddam proper, you've got 3 fire stations, and their main station is 15,000 feet. Lyme, which is a little smaller in land area, similar in population, has a fire station, an old fire station of 6,500 square feet, about 40% larger than Norfolk's. Plus they have another station in Hamburg Cove. Heartland has 4,100 square feet, and Colebrook has 6,300 square feet. So however you benchmark it, this fire station is small by all standards, by old standards or by new standards. So with that, we looked at, originally, when we got involved, we started programming the facility. We spent a fair amount of time in the fire station looking at what they have, talking to the fire department and the building committee about what they need. And I won't go through every line item, but essentially the apparatus space, what we determined was they need about 6,200 square feet versus...
How many bays is that?
That's 8 bays plus a maintenance bay and space for workbench, mechanic storage, secure storage, the oxygen, the Scott packs.
8 bays for how many trucks?
There are actually nine vehicles right now. There's 2 large trucks, what I'll call 3 medium-sized trucks, a pickup, an emergency management trailer, a utility trailer, and an ATV. Plus all the ancillary stuff that goes into the bays, gets stored in the bays.
So three of those things aren't fire trucks.
Well, no, but they need a place to be. Right now, the emergency management trailer is outside, which, that's somebody's decision, it's not our decision, but whether or not that moves in or not. But with the double deep bays, essentially what you get in with the smaller vehicles is in a single length, you get 3 vehicles instead of 2, so you get some efficiencies that way. So ultimately, what they have right now is 2,564 square feet of apparatus bay. We're recommending that they needed 6,200. And then for the other support spaces, a total of just under 3,000 versus just under 700. Then mechanical, telephone room, sprinkler, custodial closets, that sort of thing. So ultimately, what we're recommending is a building around 11,500 square feet. Originally, we're going to show you options here, but 11,500 square feet is what we think meets the requirements of the program that's been stated, as well as all those other code and standard references that I showed you. And that compares to the current building of just under 4,000, just under 3,800 square feet. So looking at all of that, we looked at a bunch of design options with the building committee. I think we were up to at least 5 with some variations of each of them. Ultimately, the building committee and the fire department felt that this option, which starting at option D because that's the option it was, so I just, for continuity through all of the presentations, I left it as D. But this is essentially, well not essentially, it's a new building that replaces the old building, provides all of the apparatus, bay space that we talked about, all the program space. It is constructed sympathetically to the neighborhood, squares up to the street or parallels up to the street for safer and easier access and egress. The cost of that, the building cost was $3.5 million. And then the other costs, swing space, because you've got to put the truck someplace and put the fire department someplace while it's being constructed. You've got the demolition of the fire station, the ambulance building, the outbuildings, so there's some costs associated with that. You've got survey, architectural engineering, special inspection fees, furniture, fixtures, and equipment to furnish the building, and then some costs to actually put the thing out to bid and manage the bid process. So ultimately, you're looking at a project of around $4.15 million. To that, it would be prudent to carry a contingency, and then recognizing you're not going to break ground tomorrow, you need to plan on some escalation as prices increase. So it's about, by the time you're said and done, you'd have to budget about $4.5 million to build that building with the masonry as you see here. Looking at options, one option was to mirror image the building, essentially build the same building, mirror image it so that you can keep the existing building up and running while you build a new station. This makes a lot of sense, but the issue is that now you're constructing the building in the regulated wetlands area, so that may or may not be allowed. So I wouldn't count on it.
I wouldn't either.
That said, we met with the Wetlands Commission, and with the work happening at the Meadow, they weren't necessarily not receptive to saying we could construct in the wetlands here because you're improving the quality of the wetlands in the Meadow. So I wouldn't say it's off the table, but I also wouldn't count on it. But running that logic through, essentially the same building, where the building cost is a little bit less because you're not working in and around an active fire department while you're building the building, and you don't need the swing space. So that brings the project cost to about 3.8. That compares to the 4.2 or the 4.15. So you bring that project cost down significantly without changing the building. Then we looked at value engineering, either option D or D1. essentially the value engineering options were to reduce the number of bays, reduce the length of the bays, and then reduce the large meeting area to just a small conference room. And get rid of the commercial kitchen and the large room. And then there are options in here to reduce the quality of the wall construction from masonry to either metal and brick or metal and metal. There was options in here to eliminate that vertical element, the training tower, and then some mechanical system options. If you accept all of those, you can't just add these all together, some are mutually exclusive. But there's about $500,000 to $700,000 you can save by doing that.
Could you go back for a second?
Sure.
That's the first reference I've seen to geothermal. Was that in some of the slides on this? Is geothermal included in the other
Yes.
Ds?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
How about
Geothermal is in there as kind of our base system, and then these value engineering ratcheted down from geothermal to geothermal heat pump with a furnace, and then there's even some further cuts you can make by going with oil and gas.
Why would you cut that?
I'm sorry?
Why would you cut that?
Why would you cut the geothermal?
Yeah.
First cost. Geothermal will cost not significantly more, but more than an oil and gas. The payback is pretty good.
I was going to say over time, it might be significantly less.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any inclusion of either solar or other green aspects?
There are opportunities to. The solar or the photovoltaics typically have a longer payback. But you know, we looked at solar opportunities, green roof opportunities. It's frankly going to be first cost budget driven is what's going to drive this. So what we're showing you tonight is a series of options. We need to hone in on a budget and design to that budget. Obviously, we'd love to design the most energy efficient, sustainable building possible, but there are some first cost implications to doing that. And
Where would the geothermal, what do you call them, wells?
Yeah.
Where would they be?
probably right out in the meadow,
On Big Pond?
Yep.
I mean, it could
somewhere out there.
be, it could be worked into the metal plan, right?
Yep. That'd be the best source of geothermal. You could do it closer to the building, but it gets less efficient than what we anticipate the soils to be. So then, after a couple of more get-togethers, we talked about, we were given this $1.8 million target. So we wanted to look at an option that the building committee had come up with to add to the existing bays, add to the existing brick wing, try and minimize the cost of this. So we looked at that. What you see here in the tannish color is the existing building, the orangish color are the additions. It stays at that angle to the street, obviously because of the existing bays. The plan works out so that you continue the bays out to the west, and then add to the brick wing on the angle of the brick wing to put the training and the meeting room in. And you essentially gut the existing building. There's a fair amount of work that needs to be done to the existing building. You can't just add this much square footage and leave it alone. So, you know, there's a premium to renovate the existing building, get it up to snuff, which would include removing the wood portions, taking up some slab, reinforcing the masonry.
If I might remember, is there an unfortunate step somewhere?
There is an unfortunate step which precipitated that ramp that you see running up towards the meeting room.
Okay.
So the cost of doing this, the existing building modifications would cost about $335,000. The building additions would be a little over $1 million. And the plumbing, mechanical, electrical systems, again with geothermal, would be about $830,000. And then you get about $250,000 on the site. So you have a building cost of about $2.4 million. Again, you add the soft cost, and you're looking at about $2.8 million to reuse the existing building and add on to it in both directions.
And that plan, option F, doesn't encroach on the wetlands, correct?
It's in the regulated area, but not on the wetlands. It's in the buffer. There's no scenario where you're not in the buffer.
Oh, I know.
So,
Could never build that building to that.
So that's a project cost of 2.8, and it's important to understand the distinction between construction cost and project cost, because the reality is you're gonna hear from all kinds of people that will tell you they can build that building for less than 2.8. Well,
Good.
so can we. But you have to have the reality of things like fees and swing space and surveys and special inspections. Those are real costs that you need to know going in. So the construction cost is the big piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. So again, diligently trying to hit that $1.8 million number. We looked at centrally doing this same plan, but not constructing anything on the brick wing, just concentrating on the apparatus base. If we do that, we're going to spend about $300,000 on the existing building. Again, even if we don't add to the brick wing, we're still going to have to do things to it, as well as to the apparatus base. You're going to spend about $750,000 adding on the apparatus base and $500,000 on the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical systems. So that gets you to a building cost, which is within the 1.8, but again, a project cost of $2 million. So for $2 million, really all you're doing is the garage.
How many bases does that have? The top should have one.
This would be the 6 new bays plus the 2 existing bays.
That's a little space in
The shaded space is existing,
the smaller
so
vehicle.
half of it would be taken over for program space, the other half would be left for the smaller vehicles. And you build 3 new double bays for the apparatus.
And I can't tell from here, but how do you get in and out of those bays? Do you back in, do you drive in?
They're drive-through, you'd be either back in or drive-through, same as they are now.
So you have the option.
Right. So again, the downside of this is it doesn't solve all of their training and other activities problem.
In this particular budget, does it include tearing down that god-awful ambulance building?
Yes.
Good. Can't wait for that thing to go.
There's nothing.
It's gonna go up in smoke, fall down.
So the sacrifice,
Will cover it.
the sacrifice in this plan, obviously, is the program space and this kind of odd angle to the street, which
Well,
is.
leaving aside the odd angle, if there was another $200,000 available, could you take care of the training space and that sort of thing?
Well, if
Talk
you go
about
back.
$2.2 million.
Probably not all of it, but, I mean, obviously, the more money there is, the more space you can build.
I just want to know if $200,000 builds a training space.
Well, this plan, which is the $2.8 million plan, has the training space in the kitchen.
And I want you to go to the $2.0 million plan.
So it's just a
Tell me what
smaller training room.
Tell me what I can add for $200,000.
You could add about 900 square feet,
Is that right? Is that what the cost comes out to be?
give or take. Some spaces obviously cost more than others, but if, for example, you took this training room, eliminate the kitchen, just put in a kitchenette or something, you'd be closer to that 2.2. It doesn't solve all the training problems, but gets them closer. So, we've got this gamut of options, but I've done a summary so that you can do kind of a side-by-side comparison. So, cutting to the chase,
Is that something we can have? So
yeah.
we'll-
Actually meant to bring hard copies today, and we had a catastrophic failure of our printer.
I understand.
I will email it to Mark.
Okay.
I actually have it on a flash drive if anybody wants it.
No, I figured you did. I just
But,
wanted to ask about it.
yeah, so, option D, which is the one that back in spring was voted on by the building committee, the 11,500 square foot one, has a construction cost of $3.5 million and a project cost, depending on the D versus the D1 option, of 4.15 to 3.9 million. Option D with the value engineering gets you to a construction cost of 2.7, the project of 3.275. Option F, which is the pared down version, is a construction cost of 2.4, project cost of 2.8, and then option F1, which is just the apparatus pays, is 1.8 and 2 million. So that's kind of the bracket of the options. And naturally, anywhere in between those, there are more options. I think we probably looked at least a dozen, but this sort of brackets the high end, the middle, and the low end.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful because we're gonna have to spend a fair amount of time figuring this out, and we have to work with the selectmen. Where's Kim? Is there any money floating around out there these days, Kim? I remember you gave a presentation a couple of years ago where you thought maybe there's some bucks. There's no bucks, are there?
No.
Only the ones through the, what was it, the town fund? I think
Yeah, there's steep money,
Steve,
and that's about it.
I think Kent got 2 of them to do their facility. It's 800,000 or $1 million, something like that.
A max of 500 each.
That's if it's available.
Yeah, and you're not guaranteed that you're gonna get it, so.
1 mil is $300,000. So it's kind of scary.
Yeah, oh, I understand.
Let me see. Questions? I did.
Hello, sorry I'm late.
Do you have elevation drawings of those, the F versions?
I don't.
Any stuff like that?
Those kind of came together late, so all we have is the exterior views of option D, which was developed for a date facility. The reality of those numbers, those construction costs, is it's going to be a metal building, probably with a flat roof or a very minimal pitch roof. That's just the reality of construction dollars. So if the target is 1.8, it's not going to be, it could be a nice building, but it's not going to be, masonry.
Just because I'm curious about it, does Plan F1, option F1, does that include the geothermal system?
They all include geothermal
Okay.
observation.
And does that include an opportunity with a couple extra dollars to do a solar array perhaps and a green roof perhaps? Because I realize those things don't pay themselves back as quickly as the geothermal, but they do.
Yeah, the demand on the solar or PV, it's a longer payback just because it's not a school with locker rooms, running showers all day, so the payback is extended. But there's also rebates and incentives and other things to do PV, so there may be an opportunity there. But again, with a flat roof, the only way to do it is to construct something on the roof, which in the residential neighborhood, we'll have to see how that goes.
I'm mindful of several solar arrays have been installed recently, one in Colebrook and one here. And, natural gas may be cheap now, but electricity is going to be an expensive thing. And I realize you can't run your car on a windmill, but some of these green things are worth thinking about.
Absolutely. We're finding that to do, a full sustainable LEED certified building is about a 15 to 20% premium on the first cost to go full blown LEED. I don't think anyone is contemplating going that extent, but for 10 to 15% more capital dollars, you could start introducing some of these things and then get a payback. Depending on the technology, it will vary. But where we find the biggest bang for the buck on sustainability in a facility like this are simple things like passive ventilation, natural daylight harvesting, as opposed to the more expensive installations. But that's not to say you can't do it, it's just it costs more money. And the green roof technology is phenomenal too, and we'd love to do that here. But again, there's a premium to increase the structure of the roof and to buy the green system itself. So they're great to do, and we'd love to do it, but it's money.
It's just my private rain garden, right?
Well, I mean, there's lots of advantages to those technologies.
Well, actually, wouldn't there be an advantage, I mean, just asking, wouldn't there be an advantage to tie it into the city meadow?
Yeah, you can use, for stormwater management,
Yeah.
you'd reduce your cooling and your heating costs significantly. So there's lots of benefits to doing it, but, having the meadow there helps. If you develop the entire thing sustainably, having the meadow there to discharge this clarified stormwater to and use for geothermal, and you get the best of both worlds there. So it'd be ideal to do it.
Is there any opportunity here to reduce the amount of pavement that's around the firehouse?
There are some opportunities. The front apron realistically will be paved just because of the nature of the beast. But we actually looked at schemes earlier where much of the site was a grass pave or other pervious paving options. They're a little harder to maintain, so you have to be careful in an emergency facility where you put them, because when the truck needs to go, it needs a clear path to go. But there are certainly parking opportunities and overflow parking opportunities to use some of those technologies.
How many members in the fire department now? Somebody knows.
40.
40? Okay. Questions?
What's the square footage of the F?
The F building is a total of 8,400, and the F1 with just the apparatus phase is just about 7,000.
Still a huge increase over what we've got now, so you can at least turn around, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, any of these schemes where you do the apparatus bay improves the apparatus bay and the workings inside the bay.
I have a general building question. First of all, you mentioned a bunch of codes before. Are there any of those codes that the current firehouse doesn't meet?
All.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was saying. The second question is, at the moment you begin construction, do you therefore have to meet some or all of those codes? Is that like you're not allowed to finish until you do that?
Well, different codes have different triggers. So, for example, a building code is not retroactive. So, if you don't do anything to the facility, you don't have to meet the new building code. Fire codes are retroactive. So, the fire marshal could go in, site the building, and require you to upgrade to meet the fire code. ADA is a federal law. We're required to meet it. Firehouses are judged a little bit differently by the law than some other public access facilities, but certainly you would come up short of an ADA review. And then the NFPA requirements, those are really more operational requirements. So, NFPA doesn't say you have to have 100 square feet. NFPA says you have to be able to fill your bottle safely, and here's how you do it, and that happens to take 200 square feet. So, right now, if you try and apply the OSHA and NFPA rules about how to do things within that building, you can't do them. And that's why the trucks get pulled out into the apron so that they have more room to do things in the apparatus bays. And, it's just storing the bottles, the Scott packs on the trucks. That's fine if that's the truck you're taking to the emergency, but if it's not, then you got to take them off of one, put them onto the other. That takes time. It's not necessarily the safest activity within those bays. If it's in the middle of the winter and you're doing that out on the apron because that's where you have room, that's a problem. So it's those operational things that are, I can't tell you to meet that code you need X square feet, which is I think your original question. So from the NFPA and the OSHA standpoint, there's not a direct correlation between square footage and the operations. Different fire stations do it differently. So, but having gone through the programming phase and having done enough firehouses to see how different departments do things, that 11,500 is what we believe, and I believe the building committee believes is the optimal facility. It's a little bit less than where we started. We originally were up 15 to 16,000, and then when we started sharpening our pencils and fine tuning things, that's where the 11,500 came
And I know one of the things that's really terrible there is just the lavatory, toilet, and bathroom situation. And that's, no matter what we do, that's going to get fixed, right?
to. Well, yeah. In option F, the public toilet rooms get redone, and there's the fire department toilet rooms with the showers. In option F1, the public toilet rooms wouldn't get touched, but you'd still build something for the firemen. So in option F1, that everything that's in that brick wing and that's in that goofy little triangle attaching the two, where you've got the radio room and the mechanic space, that would all stay. And you just expand into new days.
Did you go F1?
I don't know, there's no plan of F1. It's,
Oh, I thought I saw one.
no, it's the same plan, but you don't touch the brick wing. So let me go back to basically in this diagram, in scheme F1, everything from here down would stay exactly as is, and you would just expand the base. So these little toilet rooms would stay, the meeting room would stay, the little kitchenette would stay. You'd have to make some upgrades for code compliance, but essentially they'd stay. You'd still have to work a ramp in someplace to meet the new codes, because there's no way to make those existing toilet rooms handicapped accessible within that footprint. So you'd have to find a way to get down to the new toilet rooms in the expanded bays. So you have to work in a ramp somewhere.
What were the vehicles in the existing bays there in the brown section?
Those are the emergency management trailer, the ATV, and the small trailer that's got all the road signs and things.
And I don't know if we ever discussed, could that ever be converted to the meeting room? If those vehicles,
We parked outside.
that would be, I think that was one of our original thoughts, but
Yeah, you gotta be a little careful about putting your most finished space into the oldest raw space, because you're gonna end up sinking a lot of dollars to make that building occupiable. So the thinking here was, and we're doing that on the back half of this anyway, to get the toilet rooms and things, but if you're trying to work in a kitchen and a meeting room into what is essentially the old apparatus bay, you're gonna spend a fair amount of money doing that, to the point where you're almost better off building it off the other wing.
I can't quite see the dimensions.
The existing bays, 2 bays are 26 feet, 26 for 1.5. The addition is 61 feet long. So you're adding 50.
61 feet this way or that?
This is 61 feet from the existing building to the out.
Okay.
So you're adding essentially 50 feet of bay, 50 feet by 80 feet of bay, plus the space for the breathing apparatus, maintenance, turnout gear, storage.
Questions?
How long does it take to build?
That's a good question.
Sorry?
How long does it take to build? I'm thinking of the people working around this.
It's probably a 9-month construction period, give or take. Depending on ultimately which option it is and how much swing space there is. If if you're trying to work around the existing building, it's gonna take a little longer because you have to build in, move things around. If you had a clean run at the site, if you were, for example, building option D and you had your swing space somewhere else, it's very quick to go in, knock down the buildings, build a new one. Working around an active fire department, obviously you have to be careful. Going both ways.
When you guys respond to an emergency fire now, I know somebody has to go to the station, get the truck and drive it to the scene, but how do the personnel get to the fire?
The majority of our people go to the Firehouse.
Yeah,
Is that right? Is it
To one
go
of
ahead?
the only people that go to the scene are the chiefs,
Okay.
unless there's somebody local.
I'm just curious about that.
That's why you see on the site plan, in the front of the building, the first responders,
Right.
right behind the building, but close to the apparatus bay, or the second responders, and then plenty of parking in and around it.
It would be very well done if you could get us, through Mark or somebody, this most recent presentation, because you certainly refined it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get you the entire presentation. I can send hard copies too, or if anybody wants electronic, that's fine.
Whatever's gonna be most convenient, because we'll get disseminated to, at least this board. You guys, have you guys got these things too?
Not the newest.
Not the newest.
This one's hot off the press. So I'll send it in a PDF format. Is that what everybody?
What does that mean?
And then there'll be,
You'll be able to read
come
it.
on, right, people back.
That means I can't copy
You
it,
can,
right?
if you can,
You can't edit it.
you can send it to me, and I can print it out and stick it against me over.
Whatever's
It's
gonna
fine.
be the easiest.
Honestly, for the board, it's probably easiest to do PDF. I mean, I would imagine most of us could just read it online without printing it out. Resources.
You can do
Holly, will you put
I
it
can't,
out
I'm gonna
online?
hit it.
Holly will give you a hard print.
I can press the print button with the best of them.
Are there any architectural incentives, money rewards for building something that's going to be relatively green? Are there any competitions or is any people out there saying, look what we did?
Well, there's lots of competitions, you don't get compensated for. There are some rebates and incentives for sustainable measures. There's the Connecticut Green Energy Fund, and there's some others. Who knows what will be funded, if you're going to build this, but there are some. CLP offers rebates for efficiency.
CLP has some, but theirs is usually, they'll pay 50%, you pay 50%, something to that effect.
Right. But if we use high efficiency lighting, which we will whether you get a rebate or not, even LEDs, high efficiency motors and the air handling equipment, those sorts of things, there's some rebates out there. It's not enough money to say, okay, build the 4 million instead of the 2 million, but it all helps.
And it'd be nice to get it at least into the 20th century in that building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? That was a good question. The rest is silence? So the sooner we can get that stuff in hand, so we can look at it, and then I guess we're gonna have to meet with you guys. And some of what's going on is linked, whether you understand it or you know it or not, to what's going on with the Colebrook and the Norfolk schools. So this is a busy time in the old town this next couple of years. There's a presentation and that activity, I think, on the 30th of this month. And for those of you who have the time, it might be worth coming to see what's going on in that particular endeavor, because it's all, money. And it's in short supply.
So, just for me, Michael, I know I came in late, so I apologize if this has been addressed. Have we addressed how this might be funded in
Nope.
any way?
We haven't even begun because these good people have been working their
Okay.
tails off trying to get this to this stage. And so now the bean counters have to figure out some things and gulp and see what is out there. Yes.
About the Norfolk Cobra, will we, if it goes through, will we stand to see significant savings
I
in
don't
Norfolk?
know, but I would be very surprised if we didn't. It wouldn't be worth doing if we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. The population projections for Colebrook and Norfolk are just startling.
75 kids in Norfolk in 10 years.
Oh,
Can you believe that?
well, Barkhamston's going down too.
So is Salisbury, so is Sharon, so is Warren, so is Kent. Because nobody can afford to live here. When house prices in Norfolk get the same as house prices in Torrington, then maybe we'll have young families coming in. But you all know of several families who have left this year that had children and were,
Drive around, see how many for sale sites.
just go down before you.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And not just here, go anywhere in Connecticut and see how many for sale sites.
When you get down to Shepherd Road at 44, there's 3, 1, 2, 3.
It's not the number of for sale
signs, it's the price.
I understand, but.
But it's a population loss to the state. It's not just to Norfolk.
Well, and the reason I bring it up is the population loss means there's less population to be in the volunteer fire department, there's less population to be in the ambulance, there's less population to sit on these boards. And if you look around, I don't know what the average age in this room is, but it's a lot more than 30. Probably a lot more than 40, if you throw me in.
Well, the average age is 47.
In town, is that right? I'm older than that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so I think the multi-million-dollar question is if the town of Norfolk wants a $2.5 million firehouse or a $4.5 million.
Well, and that's what we're gonna spend the next couple months figuring out. Ooh, what's that?
That's the Brooklyn Bridge.
As I said,
That's the
try to
new World
sell it.
Trade Center.
No, don't try to buy it.
Can I help you? That's what we're gonna have to figure out. And I'm not sure how we're gonna figure it out, except we're gonna have to consult with the Board of Selectmen first off. But for all of you guys on the, I don't mean to be a sexist pig, for everybody who worked on this committee for so long, thank you. Because I know it's been a lot of work, and I know it's not always been easy or fun. And unfortunately, it's not over. This is just the beginning, not the end. But I think that was a pretty fair presentation. No, excuse me, that was a very fair presentation.
Thank you.
Well, the only other two things left on our agenda are the 2/3 vote item, of which I'm not aware of any items coming before the Board of Finance tonight on that process, and public comment. And I certainly think it's appropriate to have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'd love to have that vote if I have any.
Huh? Did I
I'd love to have that vote if I have any power. Don't think
The
I
German,
do.
somebody, Keith, why don't you make a motion?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Nina second, all in favor?
Thank you.